Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today is the final Thursday of National Poetry Month, so this will be my last Poetry Thursday episode devoted to my very favorite poets. And so it will probably come as no surprise to anyone who's familiar with the channel that this last Thursday of National Poetry Month is going to be devoted to Mary Oliver. I've shared the poetry of Mary Oliver on my channel very frequently, but today I'm going to try to focus on some of the books that I haven't read from before, and my plan is to read some poems that I have never shared on the channel. I have tended to share some of her most famous poems in other episodes, but I'm going to share a few poems today from some volumes that I don't believe I've read from before. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Mary Oliver's life and her contribution to poetry, and then I'll show a few of her books that I have, and then I'll read some poems. Mary Oliver was born in 1935 in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. Late in her life, she frequently would talk about a very troubled childhood that she had. And she experienced horrific sexual abuse as a child. And she has said that it was this abusive family that she came from that actually caused her to retreat into nature, taking long walks in a nearby woods. And that was where she discovered both her love of nature, and it's also where she began writing poetry. She said in an interview, it's a famous interview done by Krista Tippett on her show on Being, Mary Oliver said that she knows that her retreat into the natural world actually saved her life. Mary Oliver attended both Ohio State University and Vassar College, but she did not obtain her degree from either one. At some point early in her life, she made her way to New York State, where she lived and worked in the home of the late poet Edna St. Vincent Millay. She was profoundly influenced by the poetry of Millay, and she ended up living in the home and helping Edna St. Vincent Millay's sister Norma to organize the papers and letters of the late poet. Oliver also cited the works of Walt Whitman and Ralph Waldo Emerson as having had a profound influence on her, and she also cited the British Romantic poets Wordsworth, Shelley, and Keats as major influences. And I have also been a long time lover of the British Romantics, and I certainly hear echoes of the Romantics in her work. Mary Oliver met Molly Malone Cook, who was a photographer in the late 1950s, and they lived as life partners primarily in Provincetown, Massachusetts, until Cook's death in 2005. Mary Oliver did not frequently write about Molly, though several of her books are dedicated to her, but she did publish this collection in 2006, Thirst, and this book is primarily about losing her partner, coping with grief, and finding a way to go on. This is one of the books that I'm going to read from today. Her poetry is firmly rooted in the natural world, in the tradition of the 19th century Romantics. Nature is both the subject of her poetry often, and it is the inspiration for much of what she writes as well. She frequently writes about moments where the human world intersects in some meaningful way with the natural world. Her first book of poetry was No Voyage and Other Poems, and it was published in 1963. Her fourth collection, American Primitive, was published in 1983, and she won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1984. Her eighth book of poetry is New and Selected Poems, Volume 1. This was published in 1992, and she won the National Book Award for this collection. I'm going to read a couple of poems from this collection as well. Although she has long been one of America's most beloved, and I would say most accessible poets, she has not been without her detractors in academia who have accused her of writing simplistic and overly sentimental verse. I have said frequently that I much prefer the assessment that one of my favorite literary critics, Maureen Corrigan, I much prefer her assessment of Mary Oliver. Mary Corrigan reviewed Mary Oliver's book Upstream. This is one of her works, one of her few works of nonfiction. This is a collection of essays. And when Maureen Corrigan reviewed this, and this collection was published in 2016, Corrigan said that the writing is not sentimental and it is not confessional, but rather it springs from a lifetime spent paying attention and, quote, closely reading nature as well as the great works of other writers. I see Mary Oliver as using the natural world as a springboard, to connecting with that which is very, very spiritual. A couple of her other books that I haven't shown. She also published this delightful collection in 2013. This is Dog Songs, and the entire collection is about poems that she has written throughout her lifetime for and about the various dogs that have been a part of her life. Another late collection of poetry is Blue Horses, and this was published in 2014. One of my most cherished collections of her poetry is this one, Devotions, which was published in 2017, and Mary Oliver curated the poetry for this book from her works from 1963 to 2015. So while it's not a complete collection of her poetry, it is a representative sample of selected poems from all of her poetry collections throughout her writing career. Okay. I'm going to read first from New and Selected Poems. This is the collection that won the National Book Award. And I'm going to read, I think these are poems I have not shared before. The first one that I would like to read is Spring in the Classroom. Elbows on dry books, we dreamed past Miss Willow Bangs and lessons and windows to catch all-day glimpses and guesses of the greening woodlot in secrets and increases, its hidden nests and kind. And what warmed in us was no book learning, but the old mud blood murmuring, loosening like petals from bone sleep. So spring surrounded the classroom, and we suffered to be kept indoors, droned through lessons, carved when we could with jackknives, our pulsing initials into the desks, and grew angry to be held so, without pity and beyond reason, by Miss Willow Bangs, her eyes 2 stones behind glass, her legs thick, her heart in love with pencils and arithmetic. So it went, one gorgeous day lost after another, while we sat like captives and breathed the chalky air, and the leaves thickened and birds called from the edge of the world, till it grew easy to hate, to plot mutiny, even murder. Oh, we had her in chains, we had her hanged and cold in our longing to be gone. And then, one day, Miss Willow Bangs, we saw you as we ran wild in our 3 o'clock escape past the abandoned swings. You were leaning, all furry and blooming against the old brick wall in the art teacher's arms. This is one that I used to teach. This actually appeared one year before I taught the course. This poem appeared on the Advanced Placement English exam. It was the poem that students were asked to write an essay about. So when I began to teach the course, the College Board used to release the old exams, and they would give you teaching materials to use. And this poem was released along with essays that students had written about it. So we used to read this in class. We would analyze the poem, and then we would analyze student essays that were written about the poem to see what was really effective and what could have been improved upon. And this is called The Black Walnut Tree. My mother and I debate. We could sell the black walnut tree to the lumberman and pay off the mortgage. Likely some storm anyway will churn down its dark boughs, smashing the house. We talk slowly, 2 women trying in a difficult time to be wise. Roots in the cellar drains, I say, and she replies that the leaves are getting heavier every year and the fruit harder to gather away. But something bigger than money moves in our blood, an edge sharp and quick as a trowel that wants us to dig and sow. So we talk, but we don't do anything. That night I dream of my fathers out of Bohemia, filling the blue fields of fresh and generous Ohio with leaves and vines and orchards. What my mother and I both know is that we'd crawl with shame in the emptiness we'd make in our own and our Father's backyard. So the black walnut tree swings through another year of sun and leaping winds, of leaves and bounding fruit, and month after month, the whip crack of the mortgage. Praying. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention, then patch a few words together, and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak. When I am among the trees. When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks, and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness, I would almost say that they save me, and daily. I am so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches, and they call again. "It's simple," they say, "and you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light and to shine." Those days. When I think of her, I think of the long summer days she lay in the sun, how she loved the sun, how we spread our blanket and friends came and the dogs played, and then I would get restless and get up and go off to the woods and the fields, and the afternoon would soften gradually, and finally I would come home through the long shadows and into the house where she would be. My glorious welcoming, tan and hungry, and ready to tell the hurtless gossips of the day, and how I listened leisurely while I put around the room flowers in jars of water, daisies, butter and eggs, and everlasting, until, like our lives, they trembled and shimmered everywhere. The chat. I wish I were the yellow chat down in the thickets who sings all night, throwing into the air praises and panhandles plaints in curly phrases, half rhymes, free verse too, and wing with head dipping and wing ringing, with soft breast rising into the air, meek and sleek, broadcasting with no time out for pillow rest. Everything, pathos, thanks. O Lord, what a lesson you send me as I stand listening to your rattling, swamp-loving chat, singing of his simple, leafy life. How I would like to sing to you all night in the dark, just like that. And finally, heavy. That time I thought I could not go any closer to grief without dying. I went closer, and I did not die. Surely God had his hand in this, as well as friends. Still, I was bent, and my laughter, as the poet said, was nowhere to be found. Then said my friend Daniel, brave even among lions, it's not the weight you carry, but how you carry it. Books, bricks, grief, it's all in the way you embrace it, balance it, carry it, when you cannot and would not put it down. So I went practicing. Have you noticed? Have you heard the laughter that comes now and again out of my startled mouth? How I linger to admire the things of this world that are kind and maybe also troubled. Roses in the wind, the sea geese on the steep waves, a love to which there is no reply. So that's a little bit about Mary Oliver, one of my most favorite poets. Thank you for joining me throughout these Poetry Thursday episodes in this National Poetry Month. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.